Portfolio Composer, episode 155.
You're listening to the Portfolio Composer podcast with your host and coach Garrett Hope, where he teaches you what it takes to master the business end of writing music through mindset, marketing, and business skills. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter at theportfoliocomposer.com for exclusive offers, business insights, and information not shared on the podcast. And now, for this episode of the Portfolio Composer.
Artists are really in control now and, can flip the industry in a sense of, instead of artists having to impress labels and impress people in the industry in that kind of old school sense of, I really hope this label signs me. What I'm seeing now is artists doing a lot of work on their own and getting all of these great results as independent artists and labels. And then major labels are contacting them, trying to impress them. It's almost been a bit of a flip.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Portfolio Composer. I am your host, your coach, your teacher, Garrett Hope, and I'm very thankful that you're spending your time listening to this show. If you are a creative individual, or more specifically a composer, and you want to take your career to the next level, whatever that means for you, whether it means making writing music a significant portion of your income, I believe very strongly that you need to think of what you're doing as a small business owner, and you need to diversify your income streams. And I'm really excited today to introduce you to Sarah Hamilton, our guest, who can help us understand better one of these potential income streams as a composer. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk to all of the wonderful composers who are listening. I'm
excited too. Sarah is a music lover and specializes in digital distribution and strategy, working for Ditto Music, which is an international music company with 8 international offices and is headquartered in Liverpool. Sarah, I'm really excited to pick your brain about this because, as I said in the intro, I think streaming music and the potential revenue through doing that could be significant for composers.
Definitely.
Yeah. Tell us about Ditto Music. Let's just start there. What is Ditto Music and what services do you guys offer?
Yeah, sure. So Ditto Music is a music company, and we say that now rather than being a digital aggregator because we encompass so many different things. And working in the digital space means that we have to be flexible and change with the times because technology is moving at such a lightning pace. We need to be flexible and adaptable. So Ditto Music started over a decade ago in the UK and was originally a digital distributor, so distributing music online to iTunes and whatever digital stores were around at that time. We've expanded now to over 150,000 artists and labels all across the world, which is exciting. So apart from doing digital distribution and getting music onto the platforms and getting, the funds back to artists and labels, we also do promotional services as well. Everyone is probably aware that the internet is cluttered with so much music. So after getting your music online, the next challenge is rising above that clutter. So we try and help with that as well. So we have record label services. We do social media campaigns, publicity campaigns. A large part of my job is pitching to Spotify to try and get tracks added to the Spotify playlists, which is just a huge thing in the music industry at the moment and can really help with revenue for artists and labels. And so we do a bunch of those kind of things. And we also have a product called Record Label in a Box, which essentially helps people get set up with their own record label. It's been pretty exciting to see that one develop. We've had people from all over the world starting their own record labels and really enjoying the process as well. We also do work with YouTube and monetizing YouTube channels. We've recently hired a specialist in that department and just setting up offices in different parts of the world and trying to promote music from those regions. So, there's a lot of different things that we do. We do, a myriad of different things. So I guess we're a music company as well as being a digital aggregator.
That's so cool. Now, I bet some of the people who are listening are a little skeptical already because they're hearing you describe these things and they're thinking that this is just for commercial and pop and rock music. Do your services apply for like the classical composer or the film composer?
Yes, we work with classical composers a lot, and we do a lot of film soundtracks and instrumental music as well. With composers, there's obviously a lot more metadata or information that we have to deliver to iTunes, so it's a little bit more of a process, but it's something that we've decided we really want to be a part of and do. So we do work with classical artists and composers also, and it's a really huge part of the industry. Classical music, classical crossover, people are streaming it. It's often viewed as a really relaxing thing to listen to. So there's a lot of playlists on Spotify, with classical artists. And one of the things that I love about the digital space at the moment is that it represents absolutely every genre all across the world. So, we definitely don't work with one or two genres. I think I've heard pretty much every genre that exists, and the new ones that are being created are probably distributed by Ditto. So, yeah, we're excited to work with anyone, really, and there's a huge market for classical releases. So I'd urge anyone who has recordings that they'd like to get online to do so via a digital aggregator. We also don't have a quality control in the sense of, we listen to all of the music that gets uploaded to make sure it will fit with the store's style guides, but we don't have someone saying, yes, that's good enough, no, that's not good enough. Basically, if your music is recorded at a high enough bit rate, it can go on to iTunes and Spotify and everything. So I think some people are a little bit concerned that, they're independent, they're not signed to a record label, but, I think it's a great idea to get music online and start building your audience.
Right. Absolutely it is. Last year I had the incredible opportunity to interview Kevin Kelly. Are you familiar with Kevin Kelly?
I'm not. Please tell me.
He is one of the founding editors of Wired magazine, and he also wrote a very famous blog post called The 1,000 True Fans. And last year he published a book called The Inevitable. And one of the things he discusses in this book, as he's looking at technology trends, is we are moving towards paid streaming services for all content delivery. And that's one of his future predictions. And I hear you saying essentially the same thing. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I am familiar with the 1,000 True Fans, and I wasn't sure of the author, but yeah, definitely. Streaming is just absolutely going wild across the world. And I've been in digital distribution for around about a decade now, and I've seen the different trends. And, streaming is responsible for there being an increase in revenue in the music industry on a global level. I think it was 2015 was the first time that curve of the graph of revenue going down started to go up again. And that's due to streaming services. So many people are using them, people are paying for them, and they're doing a lot of work to monetize the content and make sure people are getting the premium packages as well. So, yeah, absolutely. I think in Australia, Spotify is just absolutely huge and leading the charge. Apple Music also not too far behind. So I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I admit I use Spotify nearly every day myself, especially when I'm teaching because I have access to everything.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great for just the different moods and being able to find things. A lot of people are using Spotify like Google to find music because most things will be on Spotify now. So it's got that search element as well. And one of the things I'm really interested in is the personal recommendation services that come along with Spotify and streaming platforms, and getting music suggestions and things kind of tailored to you is a really exciting part of it all as well.
This is kind of a little bit of a tangent from where I think we'll spend the rest of the conversation, but there is a real push against digital music and streaming within certain audiences of classical music. There's a push and a return towards having physical objects, in particular vinyl, or at least going out and buying a CD to support the artist. If I wanted to support an artist who was releasing, but I wanted to do it digitally, how can I do that best? Would just stream their album while I'm sleeping at night so they get a lot of plays, or what do we do?
You might have heard about it, but there was an artist that funded their entire tour by doing that. They got their fan base to just play the album on repeat, and it was just an album of silence. So that's one way. But yeah, I completely agree with that too. And I'm someone, I like vinyl also, and then I have, premium subscription to Spotify and make sure I pay for it there. So you could do a combination. I think connecting with the artist on social media if you can, and keeping up to date with, special offers or shows that they're playing so you can go and see the shows. If you want to purchase a physical CD or vinyl, that's definitely going to get more money back to the artist. So if that's what you'd like to do, I think that's a great thing to do. And then stream the album as well. Just do it all.
Sure. Going back to something you said a few minutes ago, you used the term digital aggregator. Can we define that? What is that?
Yeah, sure. So a digital aggregator is a company that will distribute digital music to online stores such as iTunes, Spotify, Shazam, and then get the money that is earned back to the artists and labels. So most will operate similarly to Ditto, where there's a website and you can sign up, add your music, you add all of the metadata and information in yourself. So cover art, WAV files or MP3 files, all of the information about your release. You can choose which stores you'd like to go to, and then you pay a small fee for distribution, which is generally around $50 or thereabouts. The digital aggregator will distribute that music to the stores. The stores will then send the funds and the reports back to us. We upload those reports into our website so artists and labels can log in, request their funds. It's basically a do-it-yourself distribution service, which is quite exciting because you can control it all. You can decide when you'd like to release something. You can choose how you'd like to structure your releases and albums. We have a lot of artists at the moment taking the drip feed approach, where instead of releasing an entire album, they might release one track a month or something like that. So it's quite exciting because the power is with the artists and composers at the moment of how they'd like to release their music. And we're basically just the way that they can do so. So, it's exciting times, really.
Oh, that's really cool. And how is that different from like when I put an album up on Bandcamp?
Yeah, Bandcamp is something I actually recommend as well. That's another way that you can support an artist, is to purchase something via Bandcamp, because often the artist, can set their own price with Bandcamp, and it's quite a direct interaction. So Bandcamp is something that is separate to the stores that we go to, but I would usually recommend as well. So we take the approach that it's completely up to the artist where they'd like to have their music. But if I was releasing something, I would put it on Bandcamp. I would also do a small run of physical copies on CD and perhaps vinyl if I could afford that. And then I would also use a digital aggregator such as Ditto to get my music to the other online platforms. So I think the best approach is to have it everywhere, because if someone's a fan, they might have a particular way they like to interact with or listen to music. They might have an Android phone, for example, so they like to buy it on Google Play. So it's good to have it everywhere, and then people can choose how they'd like to interact or purchase it.
Okay, so we actually need to, as creative individuals, get our music in as many places as we can.
Yes, that's what I would recommend. Obviously, monetized places. So unless you'd like to give things away for free, I think it's good to have it always monetized and easy to find as well.
I wanted to dig into something you'd said when you were talking about Ditto music. You said that you help artists rise above the clutter. And I think a lot about marketing, and I help composers with marketing. But what do you guys do to help your artists and your composers achieve that?
Yes, that's a really good question, and it's one that comes up all the time, because due to companies like Ditto, there is just so much music out there. And I believe that artists should create the music they want to create and then find their fan base. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. I guess what we like to do is help educate artists and composers on things like Spotify and how you can best use it. Spotify's done a lot of work recently in giving control back over to the artists and composers. So you can actually claim your own Spotify artists page, and then you can brand it so you've got your own images there. You can start creating your own playlists on Spotify. But one of the most powerful things at the moment is the access of data. So if you have access to your own Spotify artist page, you can log in and see who's listening to your music, where they are, how old they are, how they're interacting with it. It's really pretty exciting because you can then use that information in your marketing plans. So if you find out you have a large fan base in Brazil, you might then start targeting some Brazilian press or radio stations, or you might think about doing a tour there. And it's really exciting because all of this data and information can really help with your plans. So we try and educate artists on how to best use Spotify and all of the other platforms as well. And we do a lot of work with the Spotify playlisting. So playlists are just huge in the music industry at the moment. Some of the playlists that Spotify will have over 10 million followers. Some of the biggest ones are just absolutely massive. So if you get a track added to a Spotify playlist of that size, you can be generating hundreds and thousands of streams a day. So it's really great for revenue. There's playlists in every country that Spotify is in pretty much every genre, and there will be followers. So it's a great way to get your music listened to by different people. Often you can get picked up on playlists around the world. So it's good to kind of branch out from your region. And we just try and educate people on things like that because there's really a lot of opportunities that weren't around 2 or 3 years ago even. So it's not the traditional press and radio campaigns anymore. Spotify playlisting often plays largely into release campaigns as well.
So you guys actually campaign to get people on the playlist, which is there, how is that done?
Yeah, so we have a few different options at Ditto. So artists can sign up to our DIY program and then they will get 100% back of royalties, and we won't do any of the pitching, but we do have our own Ditto music playlists. I don't know if we have a classical one, but that's something that I might like to start up, I think. And so we can do that kind of thing. But then once an artist reaches a certain level, or if they'd like to apply for it, they can ask about Spotify playlist pitching, and it's something that we can do. We like to educate artists so they're at a certain level and at the right time before we do the pitching, and we can help usually artists get to that point. But then it's a matter of relationships with Spotify and, doing some research. We do a lot of research online with related artists or similar artists, and then use that information in our pitching as well. So it's quite strategic. There's a lot of research involved, but it's definitely something that's still based on relationships. Spotify curate their playlists in a number of ways, and a lot of it is algorithm based. Everyone's talking about algorithms at the moment, but Spotify can see how people are interacting with a track. So they can see how many people will save it to their own playlists or listen to it or skip it. They can see all of that information, and then they'll use that when curating new playlists. So that's part of it. But then also there's still editors and curators at Spotify. So if they like a song, they'll add it to a playlist. So it's about pitching the tracks and relationships, really. But we also have our Ditto music playlists as well.
Okay, that makes sense. When you're working with art music or concert composers,
okay,
what are some of the things that are different from when you're working with a commercially oriented composer?
Yeah, well, the metadata issue is something that's a little bit different. There's often more information that we'll need to provide the stores with. So we always make sure we get that correct, because a lot of the stores are really finicky and picky about metadata, and we have to sort of abide by those. So that's one issue. But I guess it's just finding the audience. Obviously some people listen to a huge variety of music and might listen to Miley Cyrus and an art musician, composer as well, but there's a lot of people that might not do that, and it's finding those people. So I guess we like to use the data from Spotify and Spotify artists and figure out who's sort of listening to this music and try and target those people via playlists and that kind of thing.
Does an artist or a composer have to have a full album out to release it on these services?
No, definitely not. We have a lot of artists and composers releasing singles or, 3 tracks at a time, EPs. That's the beauty of digital, is that you can create a package and deliver it how you'd like. There's not, there's not a record label exec saying, this is what you're going to do. You're going to release these 10 tracks and then you've got to do this in the next 6 months. The artists and composers are in control, and you can decide how you'd like to release something, and you can take it down if you like. You can rebrand. We have artists that change their name, and so we'll send a redelivery and change their name, and they'll get new press shots. It's basically in the hands of the artists and the composers as to how things are released these days.
Oh, cool. It's all up to us.
It's on you guys.
And one of the terms that comes up a lot in this podcast is that the gatekeepers are down, and even here they're down.
Oh, definitely. I'd say this is the best example of that, and I absolutely love it. I feel like the public is responding to being able to connect with musicians personally and via social media and iTunes and Spotify and that kind of thing. And I guess one of our best examples from Australia is an artist called Tash Sultana, who was completely independent and released all of her music via Ditto. She set up her own record label and released it via Ditto. And she got millions of streams on her videos on Facebook and millions of streams on her tracks on Spotify. And she did it all independently because she had a direct relationship with her fans. So I always think it's good for artists and composers to try and hold on to their independence as much as they can and build up these direct relationships, because then you control everything and it puts you in a great position when it comes to booking a tour, or if you want to sign with a label, you've done a lot of the groundwork yourself, and you can prove that because it's all very transparent. So I think that's exciting as well.
That ties back into Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans theory as well.
Definitely. And it's better to have those true, authentic fans who will be following what you're doing than the passive ones, even if it's a higher number. So that's definitely applicable today.
So if I was going to release an album and I wanted to self-release, why would I kind of go with the record label in a box format rather than just kind of putting my tracks out there?
Yeah, the record label in a box format is for people that want to start their own label, and there's a bit more functionality in the back end of the website. So you can view all of your artists' sales at the same time, and we have a contract wizard so you can sign artists to your label. Basically, we thought about all of the different components of starting your own record label, and we digitized it and tried to make it as easy as possible, and it's something that we're continually improving. So if you are just wanting to self-release your own music, it's probably not necessary and you can just put it up under the regular way. But if you're wanting to start your own label and perhaps sign some other artists and composers to your label and release that, the record label in a box, we help you get set up with everything in your particular country. It's launched in the UK, US and Australia. And it just gives you a bit more functionality in terms of running your label. It's pretty cool, actually. We've teamed up with Eventbrite, so we filter all of the music events that are close to your postcode. So if you're living in Atlanta, Georgia, you can type in your postcode and see all of the music industry events that are near you. There's a forum. It's pretty cool. If I was starting a label, I would definitely use it. And what's interesting is we're not just having musicians and people from the music industry use it. We have a lot of people outside of the music industry because it makes it a bit easier and less daunting, I suppose. So, we had a bus driver start a record label and that kind of thing is happening, which is pretty cool.
Really? Well, I guess this would be a good time for me to ask you, what would be 3 business tips or I guess distribution tips that you could give to composers? What could they do today to help get their music out there?
Okay, the first one would be to not be afraid of Spotify and streaming platforms. We've really noticed a huge increase in revenue for these platforms, and it's easier to get a large number of streams because more people are using these platforms. I think as a composer and an artist, it's your choice how you'd like to release your music. And if you wanted to release it just on iTunes and Bandcamp, that's your choice. But I would suggest not being afraid of Spotify because you'll just have such a global reach. So if you get a new fan in a completely different country, they can find you easily and start listening to you. It really has turned things very global, which is exciting. Mm-hmm. And then I guess secondly, it's good to use the data available to you from Spotify. So Spotify artists that I was talking about is such an exciting thing because you can basically just see who your fans are and see who's listening to your music. It's not just, a purchase somewhere in a different country and you have no information. You can see how old these people are and where they're based, and you can really kind of narrow down on who's listening to your music. So I think don't be afraid of streaming platforms and use the data available to you. And I think don't be afraid to ask for opportunities. At Ditto, we have a lot of opportunities all the time. We're associated with venues sometimes. We help put on gigs. We have our own playlists. We love to hear from artists and composers. Sometimes people will just say, do you have any other opportunities for me, or is there anything you can suggest? And, we like to take the time and help, because I think the world's becoming quite digital and there's a lot of people writing emails behind their computers, and I absolutely love meeting with people, or someone picks up the phone and we have a chat, because, any time away from my computer is golden in my eyes.
You must spend a lot of time at your computer.
I do.
Well, when I come visit your incredible country, you and I can go get a drink, and then you won't have to be behind your computer.
Definitely. We can go for a walk and then get a beer after that.
Yeah, that'd be great. One of the things you just said is that revenue is increasing for streaming, but isn't there... there's not a good equity here for the way it was in the old radio days or even in album purchasing days. Because what I see online is that an artist, an independently signed artist or self-produced, can get 1,000 plays or whatever and just get pennies.
Yes, that is true. And it's definitely not the same as it once was, but we're seeing an upwards turn. And the exciting thing is, as more people use the streaming platforms and more people listen to playlists and interact with Spotify, it's about getting the streams more quickly, and artists are seeing a lot more streams happening. So again, it's a piece of the puzzle, and it's about promotion and that kind of thing always plays into it as well. But, an artist can get 10,000 streams a day if they're added to a couple of playlists, rather than just sitting on 1,000 streams. And, I'm seeing it in the revenue that we pay out to artists over the last couple of years just continues to improve. And I think that independent artists are often on a similar playing field to artists signed to labels. And that's the exciting part.
What are some of the things about this whole portion of the music business that you've learned that have surprised you?
I think just that artists are really in control now and, can flip the industry in a sense of, instead of artists having to impress labels and impress people in the industry in that kind of old school sense of, I really hope this label signs me. What I'm seeing now is artists doing a lot of work on their own and getting all of these great results as independent artists and labels. And then major labels are contacting them, trying to impress them. It's almost been a bit of a flip, and deals are changing, and major labels have to kind of be able to do more than what the artists can do on their own. And I guess it's just been a huge flip in terms of power and control in some ways. And the data that I was talking about is a huge part of that, because everything's transparent now. There's no smoke and mirrors and doctored sales reports. It's free for anyone to see. You can look on Spotify and see how many streams something has. You can look on YouTube and see how many plays something has. And, I think that that's really empowering for artists in a lot of ways. And I have many situations of artists who have done work on their own and then been approached by labels and decided to turn it down because they feel like they can do more themselves. So that's quite exciting. And I guess also coming from Australia, if you haven't picked up on the accent, we're quite remote here. And I love the stories about Aussie artists who will get their music on Spotify, they'll get playlisted, it will start to go viral, and then they get calls from American labels. They get people in the UK contacting them, and it's just really made everything so global. So that's quite exciting as well. If you're an artist or composer living in a remote territory, you don't have to only be a part of that scene anymore. You've got the whole world at your feet, really.
What are you most excited about in the future, about where this is going?
Yeah, I guess I've probably mentioned a lot of things that I'm excited about.
You have.
My passion has always been emerging artists and independent artists, because I love that kind of new, fresh stage where artists are, really excited. They're creating music that is true to themselves. And I feel like a lot of those artists are on the same playing field as, the artists that have major labels behind them. So I guess it's just, the support of emerging artists and the access to all of these different kind of music. And I feel like sometimes there's actually a term for it. I can't think of it, but I have too much choice. I have so much music that I can listen to. Yesterday I was listening to an Indigenous artist from Australia, then a Congolese artist from the Congo, then a metal artist from Norway, and it's just so accessible. So I guess it's that kind of access to every kind of music, which is exciting to me.
Is there something that you would like to make sure that the audience hears about? Is there a question that you wanted me to ask but I didn't?
I don't think so. I guess just my whole point of not being afraid of the streaming platforms. I think there was a lot of negative and bad press initially, and I also understand that it returns so much less per stream than selling a track, for example. But I just think there are so many positive benefits of it, and like I was saying, it's easier to see some real revenue from it. So not to be afraid of the streaming platforms. But yeah, also just artists and composers can find their audience more easily now. So, we've had some issues in Australia of some artists trying to create a certain kind of music so they can be played on a particular radio station. And I just feel like that's not necessary, because radio is one piece of the puzzle, and artists who might not have success on radio can have success on Spotify, for example. So I guess artists and composers can just really follow what they want to be doing.
Yeah. I don't think it's good to write music strictly for the audience. You need to write your music and then sell it to the audience.
Definitely. And I'd much prefer that, because I'm interested in someone's vision and where they're wanting to go. And I also like that on Spotify and different platforms, you have an artist's complete catalogue there. So you can see their progression and see their transition as well. And I think that's really cool. You can just kind of dig deep into someone's back catalogue, which is cool.
Yeah. That's what I use it for a lot too. So let's say I wanted to come work with you. What can I expect, and what kind of fees are going to be associated with using Ditto Music to help me get my music out digitally?
Yeah, it's pretty cheap, digital distribution, because the artists and labels are doing a lot of the work themselves by uploading to our website. So to get your entire catalogue distributed digitally globally, in Australia, it's $118 a year. I think the US price is $99 a year. So that means that you can upload 20 albums, and that's all you'll pay. So that's pretty cool. We have a lot of people doing that and uploading their whole back catalogue. An album in Australia is $49 a year. So there's usually a yearly fee, but you can take your music down at any time. So it's not really that expensive. And it's pretty easy to do. We have other services as well. So if you wanted to add on things, if you wanted to do a publicity campaign or social media and that kind of thing, we'll listen to the music and have a chat with you and see what your goals are, and do a little bit of an audit with you and see where you might need help and what we can do. So there's additional things as well, but the base levels of digital distribution is not expensive at all. And you're looking at the stores generally take around 30 to 40% of whatever the revenue is. So iTunes will take around 30% and then give the 70% back to us. We don't take a cut of that. We send that back to the bands. So as a general rule, they take around 30 to 40%.
Wow, that's great. You guys don't take any of that. You don't divvy up the pie anymore.
No, all that pie goes back to you.
That's right. Well, why don't we take a quick break right here, and then we'll come back for the lightning round.
Cool.
I'm very excited to announce that the Portfolio Composer has become a strategic partner with the American Composers Forum. What this means is that we are working together to build our composition community. If you have not heard of the American Composers Forum, you can find more at composersforum.org, but it is the largest composer-oriented organization in the United States that has many resources, programs, and grant opportunities designed to help you build your career and to create your art. The biggest benefit I have gotten out of being an ACF member is the curated composer opportunity list. This might be the most extensive list that you can find anywhere, with opportunities for calls for scores, grants, and performance opportunities. So I highly recommend joining this organization. Again, you can learn more at composersforum.org. And I also want to invite you to join the Portfolio Composer community by becoming a Patreon sponsor. By joining the community, you will have access to private webinars that I do for the Patreon communities and students of my course, and as well as private coachings, one-on-one sessions, and a few other bonuses. So please go to patreon.com/portfolio composer.
Welcome to the lightning round.
Okay, Sarah, if you could turn back the clock, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Probably to relax. I was quite an anxious 20-year-old and trying to please everybody all of the time. And I think in my early 30s, I now realize you can't keep everyone happy, but you need to keep yourself happy first and foremost. So probably just to relax a little bit and enjoy everything.
Yes, indeed. What is a personal habit of yours that you feel leads to your success?
I think I'm quite a positive person. I get that from my dad, who is the eternal optimist. And I think that that's a good habit, to just kind of see the best in a situation and see someone's good intentions, try not to take things personally or get angry, see the bigger picture, I guess, and being an optimist is definitely helpful.
I like that. You're the first one, I think, who has ever said that you're an optimist. That's your habit.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. It's good. Well, that's because I'm usually talking to composers and we're all moody, self-introspective types.
Positivity, it helps for sure.
Do you play an instrument?
Yeah, so I have been obsessed with music since I was 4, and I wanted to be Kylie Minogue, Australian pop queen. And I still do a little bit of music on the side, and I'll probably release something soon. I do a little bit of production as well. But play the piano and sing a little bit. But an instrument that I've always wanted to learn how to play is probably the harmonica. It seems like it's quite easy, but I haven't ever been able to get good at the harmonica. So that's one I'd like to learn.
Well, there you go. That's also a new first for this show, is the harmonica. I love it.
I like the first.
Yeah.
See if I can do it for the other questions.
So this next question comes from the pure love of music. It's those moments when you're listening to something and it stops your world until that piece of music has ended. And I can name a handful of pieces that were so significant that my world literally stopped while I was experiencing them, and they created shifts for me. So what is one composition, and this doesn't have to be concert music, that had a profound impact on you, and why?
Yeah, this is a hard one to answer because there's so many. But in the question, you mentioned pulling the car over, and there's an Australian artist called Matt Corby, and he's quite interesting because he was a part of the Idol, Pop Idol series, but then completely shifted away from that and has released a lot of alternative kind of music. And he has written a few absolutely beautiful songs. One's called Brother, one's called Resolution. And I remember the first time I heard Brother, I was driving and I literally had to squeal off the side of the road and turn it up and just, Shazam it straight away and find out more about this person. And I love it when you hear some music and you're just so fascinated by it. You have to completely stalk them almost to find out everything about them. So, Australian artist Matt Corby just writes really beautiful songs.
Well, that's great. Is there a book you could recommend for the Portfolio Composer audience?
This might be a first as well.
Okay.
I love the book Just Kids by Patti Smith. And I think the way she talks about creativity and making art is really quite inspiring, and it's just such a huge part of her life. So I guess if there's some moody composers out there who want a bit of a fresh look at everything, I'd say Just Kids by Patti Smith.
You know, I think this is the second time a punk artist's book, there was an autobiography that had been recommended earlier, but no, this is the first time for her. But
Cool.
Alec Baldwin hosts a podcast. Are you aware of this?
I was just told about this the other week, and I can't wait to start listening to it.
It's fantastic because he gets the coolest people on there, and he's a great interviewer. But he has this episode where he's talking to Patti Smith.
Oh, cool.
And it's really cool. And it actually changed the way I teach the punk music section of the history of rock and roll class.
Okay, how did it change the way you teach it?
Well, it helped me understand more of the connections of what was happening and what she was really trying to do and who she is and why she stepped away from the scene when she did.
Cool. I can't wait to listen to that one.
Yeah, it's really good. What piece by a minority or female composer do you feel we should all listen to and know?
Okay, so I was recently lucky enough to go to a festival called Bardakurru Festival in a remote Indigenous community of Australia. So right in the middle of the Northern Territory, close to the desert, red dust everywhere, and I saw a lot of Indigenous artists. So I've really been trying to work with artists from these remote communities and help distribute them via Ditto and get their music heard. So I might have to send you a link to this artist because it's a little bit hard to pronounce and remember, but the artist is Kardajala Kirridarra, and the song is called Ngurra or Grandmother's Song. And it's a bit of a fusion of some traditional Indigenous Australian elements with some modern elements as well, but they're singing and speaking in their native language, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So I'm quite passionate about some artists from remote areas in Australia. And to be honest, remote areas anywhere over the world, I think there's this amazing sense of the music being untouched and it's not affected by trends and what's cool at the time. And it's a really special thing. So I'll send you a link to this one, but it's a pretty special Indigenous artist from Australia.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing it. That's great. Where can people find you on the internet and how can they get a hold of you?
Well, the Ditto website is just dittomusic.com. I also help run a website called One of One, and we interview women in the music industry in different fields and just tell their stories. And I'd love to interview some more female composers as well, so I'll have to pick your brain about that, Garrett. But those are the websites, dittomusic.com or oneofone.com.au. But people can get in touch with me via email just at sarah@dittomusic.com, sarah@dittomusic.com. I love hearing from people from all over the world, so feel free to drop me a line.
This has really been fantastic. You've helped me understand a lot more about how I can get my music up and what this whole thing is about. But I love giving the floor at the end here. Do you have any final words of advice or wisdom you'd like to share?
I think just going on from what I was saying before, don't be afraid to create the music that you want to create because you will find an audience for it. It's a very global world out there, and you can find out who your fans are using the data available to you. And, you know, it's exciting to just see all of the amazing music from across the world. So don't be afraid to create the music that you want to make.
I love it. I really appreciate you giving me your time today. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.